Welcome back to part 10 of the Alfa 159 project. We'll call this one Pulling Apart the Engine/Engines. It's been a bit of time since the last video, mainly because I wanted to see if that rust stuff worked, and I needed to give it some time. So if you remember, this engine had spun a bearing due to, I would say, some exuberant driving on Santa Pod Raceway. So I just want to see if this block and pistons can be saved. We have three 2.4 JTDM engines in various states of damage. It's under that sheet on that stand, and disassembly. This was the most complete one, which is a 200 brake horsepower, 2006 engine. This one, 2007, and that one under there I'm not sure about. So I was gonna just chuck this in just for now to get me on the road with the red 159. There are broken studs, this one being the latest. 6mm stud for this coolant pipe, which had already had a problem with the plastic screw that lives in there anyway, and may have caused some overheating issues. Not 100% sure. It never really used any water, it never really got hot, but you never know, do you? It's done 90 odd thousand. When I bought it, the dealer, yes, got it from a used car dealer, an Alfa specialist. It just had a cam belt, water pump, tensioners, all that stuff on it, and I've only done a few thousand miles in it. This was the water pump I've just taken off it, which is the bearings rumbling in it, and this is the water pump I've just taken off that engine, because I was hoping to use this obviously. This is genuine, this one is not. I just figured, since I've got a head gasket, I've got various other gaskets, I've got head studs, I've got a box of stuff, box of parts for a crank seal, so I figured I may as well just make one decent one out of the three. That's the wiring loom off the engine loom itself, which leaves us with these, which is going to be a good chance for me to look at the injectors and see what the difference is between the 200 brake horsepower and 210 brake horsepower injectors. I think there's a difference in length, amongst other things, so it'll give me a good chance to clean it all up, decide whether I'm going to use this block or not. The reason this is all covered up in duct tape is just to protect the rocker arms and whatnot, because this is the one that I chucked into the Fiat Coupe to see how well it fitted. It didn't. Okay, so I want the head off this one, because I'm pretty sure this is a good head. This is a 210 brake engine from the red Alfa, which had suffered bearing failure quite catastrophically. Did some good quarter mile times though, down Santa Pod. I found the timing slip in the glove box. Pretty good for a stock diesel. I think it's about 16 seconds, I think, something like that. Well, that's not bad, is it, for a big, heavy saloon car with a diesel engine in it? Right, I'll take that tape off and show you what's underneath. You can see why I wanted to protect that, so that everything is still in order. And these are they just sit on the top of those valves. There's a little retaining clip under this side, which is not easy to see. Yeah, but it's been quite well looked after. You can see this, pretty clean. But I've got a few, I say a few, maybe a couple more cylinder heads kicking around. One thing I've noticed, every single cylinder head that I've got has exhaust studs broken. You can see where that one's been blowing. Luckily, only looks like the one. That fella there. You can see that focus. There. That stud hole on our 200 brake horsepower engine is sheared nicely, and that one, and that one, and that one. And it did have, lost focus. There we go. I think there was a bit of a top end tap on that. I think. I can't be sure. So we know this one's okay. Just got to not dislodge any of that stuff, or perhaps it does need a clean out and stripping, and I'll put these in a box that keeps them in order. Yes, that's what I'll do. I've got to find a box. Not sure how well this is going to work out. You buy something and it comes in a moulded, blown box. You just cut the insides out and you've got a box you can use. Quite handy. There they are, all out. 20 of those little fellas. Just if I shut the lid, give it a good shake, that could cause an issue. I need to keep them separate. Head bolts all out. The head bolt washers are still in the head at the minute. So I'm going to lift this off and put it on the bench and have a look at that. So the head is off. I shall reserve judgment for the time being. I'll just give that one a wipe. That looks okay. In the cylinders. Cylinder 1. Cylinder 2. That 4. That's 4. That. Lots of debris. And yeah, probably just what's fallen off the cylinder head gasket, to be fair. Now this is the engine that's on a stand, and it is an engine I bought cheap because I didn't actually buy the engine, I bought the brand new oil pump that's attached to it. Now the plan was I'd just pull the oil pump off and rebuild that engine with it. But the guy I got it off had said, try as he might, he could not get that bolt out. Left hand thread, he knew it was left hand thread. He couldn't get it out. And neither can I. I don't know if whoever fitted the pump, because I think he had the work done by an Alfa specialist, and I don't know if they put Loctite on it, but it is not coming off. Not a chance. I've had some nice lumps of wood wedged in the crankcase, a bar with a scaffold bar on it, which I then promptly snapped. So, well, that was two breaker bars I broke. So I gave up with that and thought, well, let's just clean this up and rebuild this as best as I can, bearing in mind I cannot get the oil pump off. So that means I can't change the mains particularly. I can change one side, but I can't change the other. That's not really very good. So this is a big end, which is worn, as you can see, but the crank is alright. What's interesting about these conrods is they are not made of two halves. It's one piece, which is then cracked. I can't remember what the correct term is, but yeah, so they only fit together that way. So what do I do now? To just build this up and just hope that that's all okay. Maybe I should. It turns over alright. The mains, I've had the mains off, and they obviously look a lot better than the big ends, because it's the big ends that take most of the abuse for most of the time. So I could probably live with just changing the big ends. Did have some plastic gauge somewhere, but I don't know where that's gone. It'll turn up. Oh, is it in there? I'm sure I've got some somewhere. So this is the next job. Other than that, it's pretty tidy. Bores are reasonable. Still see the cross hatching. I don't know how many miles it's done. I think it was around about 100k mark. It did have, oh that's right, yeah, it's coming back to me now. Right, the reason why this was just the oil pump was because he had a problem with the cam belt, if I'm thinking correctly, and it skipped a tooth. Usually when the cam belt goes on these, it breaks the rocker fingers, but on this occasion it did that, and it bent valves as well, as you'll see from the results on the pistons in a second. And bent some valves. There you go. There's a valve print on that cylinder, on that piston. That's an indentation from a valve hitting it. About this one. And again, you see the rings from the valve. Nine times out of 10, the pistons survive. You can rebuild the top end, new cam belt on, and then it'll go for a bit, and then all of a sudden the big ends will fail. I've seen that quite a few times, not particularly on these engines, but on other engines that cam belts have gone, because the bearings take the brunt of the hit. One of those little needle roller bearings ended up going into the oil pump and seizing that up, hence the new oil pump. And I think it was that point that the cam belt jumped off again and he'd had enough. So just to quickly reiterate, this is the one with the spun bearing and the dead crankshaft. Yeah. Turn it up that way to unturn it that way, so I can get the crank out of that one, which is a good thing because the pistons look a lot cleaner in this one. Than they do in this one. We know they haven't stamped the cylinder head because the cam belt's never gone on that. We know these ones have stamped the cylinder head. And there's a fair bit of carbon in there. That just looks like it's done a lot more miles. It's been stood over a year now. Well over a year. But I don't know what to do. The crank's no good in this one. Crank's no good in this one. I think the crank's okay in that one. That's the head from this one. That one we haven't taken apart yet. So, who knows what we're going to find in that one. We could just send it. No, can't do that. I can't do it. Can't bring myself to do that. I don't know if I'm going to be bothered really to take this one apart, but obviously I've got to. See, don't know what the oil pump's like in this one. When you know you've got a brand new oil pump. I don't know how bad the rods are going to be in this thing. The rod's going to be dead, isn't it? It's going to be dead. It's number... This one. This one is... That's alright. There's number 2. Number 1 and number 2 definitely stamped. 4 looks alright. I suppose it's not going to be every piston that takes a whack, is it? I mean, don't know. Maybe I should pull that piston out. Pull that piston out. So back onto the 200 brake engine. What do we reckon the chances of the injectors coming straight out will be? Pretty solid. with my fingers. Right, let's get some tools on the job. To be fair, they're coming out alright, considering the state of them. Look at that. They're not great. These two are still pretty much fast in there, but let's see if I can persuade them out. Okay, so this is engine number 1. The original engine that came out of the red 159. That's engine number 2, which came from my black 159 Lusso. We'll call that one engine number 3. I think what we're going to do is we use the crank from engine number 3 to replace this crank. We use the brand new oil pump from engine number 3 on this engine, and we'll use as much of the oil system, oil filter housing, all that sort of stuff, maybe off this one. Don't know, depends how it cleans up. We took the head off. Head looks good. I've just turned it over upside down because, oh no, engine stand's busy, so I'm just going to pull this one apart on the floor and see what we've got. So the sump's off. As you can see, crank is very damaged. This cap also very damaged. I guess bits of that bearing from number 1 gone into the rest of them. Been hot, very hot. The oil starvation? I mean, you would think, being number 1 so close to the oil pump, take the rest off and have a look at those. So mains, not so good. Again, must have been hot. So, definitely looking like an oil pump, oil problem. There was no evidence of head gasket damage. So we'll do a bit more. Now it's time for the oil pump to pop off. Interesting fact about this oil pump: you can't turn it with your hand. Even when I put it back on the nose of the crank and turn the actual pump, it's really tight. So it'll be interesting to see what's going on in there. Whether that's a result of crankshaft bearing debris going into the pump, or whether the pump seized up first and caused the oil starvation. Don't know. I'll take that off and have a look in there at some point. Right now I just want to get the crank out I'm going to leave the pistons in the bores for now, because that's the safest place to keep them. And we'll go on from there. Now we have all the caps off. I've taken the crank out. She's up there. It's number 2 main that interests me right now, because this is the main cap from number 2. And this is the bearing that came out of there. I say came out of there, it literally fell out and doesn't like sitting in there where it's supposed to live. Look at that. Well, that one's not moved. That one is toast. These are CL. Oh, I've got a good bit of focus at that point. It's gone down anyway, look, you can see it. That little, it's gone down as far as there. Yeah. So that's the situation we're at so far now. Don't know what to do about that. More investigation, I feel. So now, knowing that this number 2 main bearing cap could quite possibly be damaged, I don't know if we should just abandon engine number 1, or do we just move to engine number 2, pull the head off and the sump off, and see what that's like. That might be a viable option. I know it ran okay and it was, it was good on performance. Or do we go with engine number 3 and swap out the pistons from engine number 1, throw some new big ends in it? Obviously I can't do the mains because I can't get the crank out, and then just chuck it back together and send it. I think I'm probably going to have to get a 3/4 drive breaker bar and go heavy duty on that and get that crank bolt out. Tell you what, let me know in the comments what you would do. Thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.